Everyone, we're about ready to get started, so if you can take your seats. This is the Operations, Data, Security, and AIOps track. So we're going to start out, Adaora's got a panel. It's on tackling the data challenge, establishing reliable, dependable data, doing it at scale. So Adaora, and she'll announce all of the panelists after you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure meeting you all. I hope you've enjoyed the event so far. Patrick introduced me as Adaora Okeleke. I'm the principal analyst for data AI and platform services at Analysys Mason. And today we have a panel on the topic tackling the data challenge. And what we'll be discussing is on how we establish reliable, dependable data and doing it at scale. I'll not be doing this on my own because that's a very big question. So I've got industry experts to discuss on this topic with me. First will be Jaime Tatis. Jaime is the VP of Data Strategy at TELUS. You're welcome, Jaime. I've got Abhilekh Bhardwaj. Abhilekh is the head of Operations Strategy at 3 UK. And finally, not the least, is Prashant Kumar. Prashant is the Chief Innovation Officer for Elisa Polystar. Great, so nice to have you all on the panel. It's a big topic we have today, data. Anything about data is big, is critical, it's crucial. You know, there are so many ways we can you know, kick off this discussion, but you know, just to cut through the chase, what, in your view, what would you consider as the key role that data is currently playing within your organizations when it comes to automating operations? So probably start with you, Jaime.
Sure. So I will say the data for us is the now, the future, the fuel that is going to take us to where we need to go. You know, for the past many years, everybody has realized the power that is on data that you have as a company, but I find that across many industries, not just telco, everybody figured out that we're not mining that really well. And one of the main things that we came to realize many years back as well is that we needed to do certain investments to be able to change that. And it's very, very important to come to that realization because you start to understand that, well, when you look at the landscape, it was very siloed. You need to break those silos so actually you can have a unified data layer that allows the company to be able to combine that expertise and be able to use the data that the company has available in a responsible manner to be able to have better decision making, to launch products faster, better, to personalize customer experiences, to be more reliable on the network, you name it. Mm-hmm. Now when you look at you know, what is the most recent technology available for us, when you look at Gen AI, for instance, it's now another whole world of possibilities that we're very much working on to be able to get, you know, initially all this knowledge-based information that we have on how we operate the network, how we, manage the call centers, and be able to get that technology in a way that allow us to be more effective, more efficient. And all of us as an industry, we're all looking towards getting there as well. There was conversations this morning regarding energy consumption. How are we actually using this technology to be able to achieve that? And one of the steps that we have done in TELUS, we actually released an open source code last year on code that we created with reinforcement learning that actually allow us to be 15 to 80% more energy efficient on equipment rooms. Because when you look at Canada and all the countries that are on the North Hemisphere, there's many opportunities to use free cooling. And one of the main things that we learn is that when you actually have the controller understanding what is the weather forecast and be able to operate the compressor on and off of the AC or the heater, and actually using the free cooling, we were able to get 15, 18%. And one of the decisions that we made is, well, what do we want to do with this? Are we going to try to huddle around it and find a way to productionize that? Or is better to release it? And for us, the decision was very clear. Well, we really want to release that. And the reason we want to release it is because we want every single telco to use it if they can and make it even better. And our hope is if they make it better, they release it once again. And that's one of the main premise for us is there's a lot of things that we can do together where we don't compete. Like all of us wants the same outcome. All of us wants to be more energy efficient. So we need to be very open-minded on which areas can we collaborate and actually set the standards on how we want to be regarded as an industry. It will be really amazing that actually in the future, we are really well known that we're one of the first industries that actually really took advancements on the way that we are more energy efficient conscious and the results that we can bring from that.
Really interesting. Thanks so much for that. So this is really the power TELUS has been able to unearth by being able to make better use of data, right? Abhilekh, from 3 UK, what's your view in terms of the role data can potentially play? And what are some of the challenges you're facing in terms of really getting the data to achieve those objectives for you?
Great question. I lead the ops automation team in 3, and we try to automate processes for operations at the infrastructure layer or the resource layer, at the service layer, and at the customer layer. And for all automations, you need data. The data currently there is no one data lake or one data warehouse for us to dip into and extract. So we need to go across domains because data is kind of federated and distributed across domains. And as and when new deliveries happen in any of those domains, whether it's RAN, core, IT, or even OSS and in transport, you need to ensure that you're able to collect data. So that's just a summary overview of how data is distributed for us and why do we need data. In terms of challenges, your second part of your question, we see challenges from throughout the life cycle of automation. So right from even if we have data, is the quality there? Are we getting the data that we need it to be? And the definition of quality, depends on what kind of automation you're doing. Because if the data is not there, or if there are some inconsistency in data, then there's a lot of processing or data transformation that we need to do on the automation side. There are obviously access challenges to data because of security, regulatory concerns. A lot of PII related data needs to be masked. So we need to ensure that we play by the rules. But playing by the rules means that there is a delay in delivery of automation because of restricted access, let's just say. Then even if we have access, even if we have got good quality data, the question comes, do we understand what we are looking at? So what is the data telling us? What's the story here, right? So, automation analyst cannot be an expert in extracting that story from the data. So we need domain expertise. And there lies the challenge in terms of how do we interact from a people perspective or relationships perspective across the organization, cutting across silos and departments. And then finally, when everything is in place, once the automation is in production, we need to worry about if it breaks, what happens, right? So that's where the data ops comes into being. And we need to ensure that it's not the customer or the user of automation, we come to know about any breakage in data pipelines before the customer realizes it or the user realizes it. So that's, I would say, in a nutshell, a summary of challenges that we face in ops automation.
Right. Thanks. That was quite a comprehensive response in terms of the challenge, because what you've said helps us understand that the data challenge isn't just in one area. It kind of straddles different areas, particularly throughout the life cycle of data. So for every stage, there is an issue to address. And so the question is how well those challenges could be addressed. Prashant, you're coming from the vendor side, and you've been engaging with a lot of operators. Are you seeing similar challenges that Jaime and Abhilekh have shared with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the things what Jaime and Abhilekh has mentioned are quite prevalent in the industry. But I'll take a step back, and I'll start with a very simple thing. Is look, we are living in the golden age of data. Google has gone and showed you can build a $2 trillion company based on data. That's a $2 trillion company. And there is a lot of things what's happening in the market where looking at what the telcos are trying to do, how we trying to build the things, we see from an outsider perspective, and I'm not an outsider because I've lived most of my life on the operator side, and I can see some of the colleagues sitting here whom we have worked with on the both sides of the aisle, is we see Henry Ford's Model T level, we see horses in the market, and we see like really fast Teslas as well. It's a really fascinating set of kind of a mixed breed around the world in different parts of the world. Operators are in different parts of the journey, as Jaime mentioned that they have already done, they're in a part where they have gone and open source stuff. There are customers we meet who are still very skeptical about open source. On the other hand, we have customers like Vodafone who have done the journey to cloud already. Mm-hmm. So it's all in all, what I'm trying to say is it's a mix of different places, which is kind of a manifestation of where you are, what's your business looks like. North America is very different, and Europe is very different. Eastern part has got different innovations done. But gist of all of it is anyone who is not on the data or is still questioning that the data is relevant to our operations, probably, I would say, has a very unoptimized view of the world, and I'm being very diplomatic when I'm saying that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a mixed breed across the world.
Across the board, right? So we've touched on several challenges associated with data, right? I think we all want to find out, okay, how can we address these challenges? And so if I start with you, Jaime, how has TELUS been able to address the challenges you talked about? I think you talked about, not being able to access the data and mine it properly to get the insights, right? So what exactly has TELUS been able to do to address that challenge effectively?
Yeah, well, many things. And one of the main ones is, well, you have to invest in it. You actually have to fix it. It's not going to be magic. I think it was the Telefonica CTIO that says nothing is free. Well, this is not free either. So you're going to have to make an executive decision. Is this something that you really need? Do you see really value in it? And yes, well, you have to invest. And that's what we did 5-6 years ago. We started the journey to actually modernize the whole architecture stack that we have for data. Mm-hmm. So in 2019 or so, we started a partnership with Google, and actually we are running our data stack in their cloud. And through that process, we've been able to gain the agility and access to new functions and features right away. As I mentioned this morning, in the past, we sometimes needed to wait a year to actually get some features or libraries or access to many different things on the on-prem data lakes that were a little bit getting old and obsolete. And having that architecture actually allows you to scale and go faster at how you create value for your customers. The other main thing is the main gains of having reliable access to data is the ability to experiment, iterate, and scale what works. So there's going to be a lot of experimentation that you're going to have to do and be able to take the experiments to production and be able to scale those ones. And having the right architecture that allows the team to experiment, access the data really reliably is very important. There's many things that needs to happen to be able to scale on analytics and AI. Everybody always looks at AI that is kind of the cherry on top of the pie, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to get right beforehand. So, we have a very strong metadata management and data quality program for many years. We did not have in the past a centralized data catalog across the company. Now we do. If you don't know what data you have, how you're going to know what data is available for you? Then you have to have really data engineering practices. Well, you need to have very efficient, reliable ways to bring all the data from different systems into that single entity. You need to have a good architecture that allows efficient access for team to experiment, understand what data they have, productionize if you need to, and be able to serve that at a different level of expertise. So the architecture we have, you can either get 2 columns to make a graph, or you can have a very advanced machine learning engineer doing MLOps at a scale to do a 3,000-line ML code and deploy it. So that's one of the main things that has been allowing us to move fast on that space.
Interesting. That's very good feedback. Thank you, Tatis. Abhilekh, what has 3 UK been doing to address the challenges, particularly around the data lifecycle management?
I think our approach, I would like to say, is a practical approach in the sense that we are not trying to boil the ocean when it comes to different domains, like RAN, core, IT, and other domains. We do have data lakes. We do have, so we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we prioritized some of the customer experience related data from our core domain and some of the customer journey related data from our IT stack, especially the transformed stack. And we built a self-service data infrastructure platform, which enables people to subscribe to whatever data they want to get access to, rather than having access to the IT systems or any technology system directly. So I think that that has taken quite a while. It's a journey that we are on, and not everybody knows what data exists. So the other transformation that we have done, and I call it transformation, but trust me, it's a silent transformation in the sense that we are not beating the drum about it. And we realize that we need to treat data as a product, and we need to ensure that it's discoverable, right? So today, if for a specific service, let's say mobile number portability, if somebody needs data, they know what is the data pipeline for that, and what to do about it, and what are the sequence of steps to get access to that. So we want to democratize data access and building of data products, so that and the only way to do that is by making it easy to discover what foundational data products exist today, based on which we can do AI modeling if you need to. I mean, if there's a data scientist, why not? Or if somebody just wants to create a report, that's fine too. So I think that's the approach that we have. And as I said, it's a journey that we are on. We are taking an evolutionary approach rather than a revolutionary approach.
So from the feedback, Jaime and Abhilekh, you've shared, does sound like the data catalog is becoming a very critical asset when it comes to really addressing the data challenge. Do you see, is that the same view that you share, Prashant?
Yeah, I think I'll build upon what Abhilekh mentioned, because I think what you were sharing was what data meshes basically. And the challenge with big data is big. And that's what something which it still doesn't register in the industry is that PM data is big, but it's not as big as probe data. I'm just going in specifics here because the context and nuances are important. Because when you have to ingest 20 billion, 40 billion events, it's very different than ingesting a few thousand PM files to do things. It's not wrong. Both the things are right. Contextually, everything needs to be brought together. So there is a fair amount of investment and things, as Jaime mentioned, that you have to have a very high-level buy-in to this. It needs to be both top-to-bottom and bottom-up approach. The design patterns, what Elisa Polystar we've been seeing is most of the customers have been looking at middle out. People go and build the biggest data lake possible and say, hey, it is not creating value for us. That's because you've invested in a lot of servers and a file system, but you have to feed it. And everything what Abhilekh and Jaime mentioned around the data quality, data ingestion, ops, and everything. So our approach has been very grounded and very, very bottom-up approach. Is let's solve the biggest challenge, which is the data ops. Most unsexiest problem. No business case around it. Because if you go and sit in front of finance folks, like, hey, I want to ingest 50 billion events. They'll say, what values are you going to create for us, right? So all those things comes into context, and then you start building, and as it matures, you have to start looking at data quality and cataloging, and everything comes into play. So we have been preaching data mesh for a while now. We have delivered multiple data meshes. Is it exactly what ThoughtWorks started with? No, because we don't have to go, it's not a Bible. We have taken a contextual view of it and implemented that in the industry. And the last point I would touch upon is what Jaime mentioned around the cloud. You see, the tooling in the cloud is so much forward-looking and so huge and so much better. Most of the data projects, in my experience, have failed because people fixate on the last mile. They say, hey, you will use Power BI or Tableau, and this is the holy grail of all the dashboarding. But in reality, the moment you take billions of events and make it very small, and machine learning doesn't happen of billions of events, machine learning happens on the most structured data set, and let the last mile user, domain expert you mentioned, PM people from probes, use the tools what they want to use. It will still not change the cost, but you have to architect it in a data mesh way, work backwards where data is a product, where domain experts are the primary citizen in the data architecture rather than your file system and the servers, and work backwards from that with a very, we have an architecture which is super composable, and it's decoupled, so it fits around what you have invested in, whether it's on-prem or in cloud. And these are some of these ethos we have been sharing with our customers, and we've been fairly successful in the market with multiple deployments and things. And again, like anything in tech, it always evolves, it gets better, it gets cheaper, faster. And as long as we have that composable architecture where we can change path with least of investment, but it still sits in the broadest data strategy. That's what we have been basically doing with big customers and trying to bring things rather than doing like 4 PM systems and customer experience system. They all do the same thing. Collect, store, analyze, visualize. You know, and then machine learning comes beyond feature tables, basically. So anyway, I can go on and on this topic, so I'll pause here.
Sure, no problem. I think so. Kind of in summary of all we've talked about, it's really about dealing with the data challenge from the infrastructure perspective, but also looking at it from the environment in which you're trying to use. Is it scalable enough? Is it agile enough to allow you, to host as many data sets as you want to, and also how you manage and operate that data, and how you make that data available to your users. So you're beginning to think about multiple factors and multiple facets. So thinking about the architecture, you're thinking about the platform, you're thinking about your operations team, how are the teams skilled or equipped to deal with this new data challenge. I can imagine it's a whole gamut of responsibilities to address. But in terms of the journey that TELUS and 3UK are on at the moment, where do you see yourselves in the next 5 years? And how are you preparing yourselves to get there when it comes to maximizing the value of data? Jaime, I'll start with you.
Years from now, I'm still trying to put my head on what is in the next 2 or 3. So I just find we are living on a time that every 6 to 12 months, there's something dramatically new. And we're just learning to understand what is the best way to put it into action, what the best way to use that to create more value for our customers. So where we're going to be in 5 years, God knows. I'm sure that it's going to be, a totally different world than the one that we see today. But when I look at the opportunities that we have many opportunities to fully transform the way that we do business, the way that we operate, the way that we create value. I find many industries are going to look very different in short time. Every time I read the news, I see all the disruptions that something new is creating to many industries. This morning I was looking at the Financial Times, and they actually were talking about the impact to the education industry. And actually, many companies that offer education online, their stock was really down just this morning because many of the events that has happened in terms of technology. So for me, what we really need to get good at is we are facing constant change, and whoever adapts to it, who has the right culture to understand and get ahead of that, is going to always have an advantage. The other thing is, it's very hard to understand, as I said before, what is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. But the better we get at having the right culture, the right mindset across the entire organization to adapt to the new changes is going to make a huge competitive advantage for that organization and industry. And this problem is not just for telcos, for everybody.
Sure.
So I'm sure that, if I fast forward in 3 years from now, we'll be talking about a totally different tune when it comes to it. The other thing that you can see is we've been talking about 5G for how many years? 5? 6? For how many more years we're going to talk about 5G? 3, 5 more? For how many years we've been talking about AI? 2, 3? For how many years we've been talking about generative AI? First year, maybe last year? So one of the things I just want to point out is the change that is happening on the data domain, the software side, is completely outpacing the network side. And that's going to make our industry look very different in the near future. So I'm very excited for what is going to happen. I think we're very privileged to be in such a moment. And whoever has that right culture across the org is going to win for certain.
Great, great. Abhilekh, Jaime has kind of painted a picture of what the future would look like. Now, and he talked a lot about culture, but the key point is that the data practices today will be completely different to what it is that we're seeing today. So from your perspective, what should the operators be? How do you see the operators preparing themselves for that change from a data perspective? What are some of the, I'll use the word, what are some of the best practices in your view that operators will need to kind of bear in mind given this massive change that is ahead of us from a data perspective? What should they be doing? Spend more time on the data, focus more, invest more, what?
I think I absolutely agree with whatever Jaime said about 5-year perspective. So I'm going to give you I'm going to look at the same thing that Jaime said from an operations lens. And there are two things here. One is, we need to, and again, this is more applicable for operations than maybe in technology or network. The data challenge in operations is not about technology. We've got all the technology that we need. It's not about process or operating model. We've got tons of slides and PowerPoints, talking about operating models. It's about people.
Yeah.
It's about data literacy. The data is there. It's like gold is there in front of you, but if you don't know how to extract gold from the ore, then you're going to struggle. So it's about people. And when I say people, it's not just skills. It's also about do we prioritize data-driven operations or data-driven decision-making in operations? And it's not a 5-year thing. I think it needs to happen in the next, at most, couple of years. If it doesn't happen, as Jaime said, we have been talking about 5G for 5 years, but the technology is, evolving at a much faster pace. ChatGPT, for example, it's a great tool, but if people don't know how to make use of that tool or leverage that tool, it's a waste. So I think that's the transformation that I would like to see in telcos, and this is where 3 is already, and especially in my team, I emphasize on that knowledge sharing, whether it's upskilling or even democratizing data and automation so that it's not just for the automation team, automation should be for everyone. So that's the perspective from an operations perspective, from future 2 years perspective, I would say.
Thank you so much. We've got just about a minute, Prashant, but on your end, what do you consider best practices that that you want to leave with potential operator customers around data?
Yeah, so it'll be very quick and short. Look, disruption is here, as Amy mentioned. Cloud native is here, it's not going anywhere. Hyperscale infrastructure is here. You're spot on around the general literacy on the cloud and stuff, that what it is generally is there. I have the privilege to work for an organization which is owned by Elisa, Finland, which is one of the biggest operator, which is shut down more or less their NOC 10 years ago. So I have the privilege of sitting front seat and experiencing that how it's happened. Is it rocket science? It's not. Did they go and jump into the machine learning bandwagon? No. It is a very stage-grounded approach. Collect data, store data, if then else. 80% of the problems in the world can be, within telco world, can be solved with if then else. But people will still go and start looking at, hey, what is the best LLM model can do? The ChatGPT is an LLM model which just predicts a next word based on a number, based on all the trillions of texts it's looked at. For us to train a ChatGPT equivalent automation model, we need tons of scripts, fixed scripts, where practitioners have gone and fixed an issue. Hey, if a hard disk has failed, what did you do to figure that out? To teach that. Change the vector, bring in vector databases, all of these things. But I can go on and on the tech side of things. But you're right, it's about people. But what I'm trying to say is the way how the last time when I was working in Operator, that was 10 years ago, and the 4G, as part of the 4G launch team, 4G is 10 years old. We've still not gone and automated everything. There's a reason for that because of non-grounded approach. And I think we could do a lot of achievement in the industry if we took a very stepped approach to achieve that, but everything starts with very simple things. Take data, put it in someplace, starts empowering people, and then machine learning will happen as a last mile stage of it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a very insightful session. Thank you very much for your time, Jaime, Abhilekh, Prashant. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for listening.